Hey, we got the king of pizza in the house.
Something like that. I got to get into the spirit, you know?
Mamma mia.
That's right. Now, Devin,
It's coming up so quickly.
I don't think that dish is deep enough. I'm sorry.
No,
to
I don't
say.
think it is either. I just typed deep dish and went to Google or whatever, but
Well, I'm glad you haven't given into AI to just go into AI for random photos that you want.
That's my favorite quote from Jaws. We're going to need a deeper dish.
We're gonna need a deeper dish.
We're not going to have time to find deep dish while two of us are in Chicago, right?
Well, good thing that that they basically throw it at you here. So you're not going to have to find it. In Chicago, deep dish finds you, I guess is what I was
It's
trying
like
to say.
when you get off the plane in Hawaii and they put a deep dish pizza around your neck.
Yep, exactly.
probably a little bit too heavy, no?
I mean, it hurts, Devin. It hurts for
That's why
the first year or two that you're here, and then you get used to it.
you got to eat it, Devin.
Yeah.
Get the weight off your neck. The albatross of pizza.
A lot of
Just
people don't
eaten.
know that song by the band, The Weight, is about pizza around your neck.
Heard it here first.
Take a pizza off, Fanny.
Hello and welcome to episode 263 of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Chicago, technically Skokie.
Ugh.
Living,
Is that a city?
it's a village.
Is that a hamlet?
We claim to be the biggest village in the world, but I know some people from Oak Park who take umbrage with this claim to fame.
Don't they have
What-
strict
what-
population limits on what a village is?
What are you talking about again? What place is this?
Skokie?
Never heard of it.
You may be familiar with the translation of the Potawatomi, Skokie. It's swampland.
Oh, I thought that was what Chicago was. I thought it meant stinky onion.
I think that's what Chicago is. It's the stinky onion.
Yeah. Can't wait for the stinky onion deep dish pizza. Actually, the only reason I'm familiar with Skokie is because of the Skokie Adventure Park. Is that what that place is called?
With the miniature golf and the driving range and the batting cages.
Yes. Is it called the Adventure Park?
I think it's called Skokie Athletic Park, maybe.
Oh, well, not as fun.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Let's
Dave's gotta
not
work on his
introduce.
slice.
We're not introducing anyone else. It's just
Okay.
going to be me and Dave talking about the suburbs.
Yeah.
While
Perfect.
other silent, frequent guests look on in horror. Okay, well, that was Dave. We heard from Dave. Let's hear from Doomwake next. Hey,
Yo,
Devin.
It's me.
Whoa, I'm last.
I'm-
I don't think I've ever been last.
Well, he just
in
cut.
263 episodes.
Well, you're not last now. You just cut into mine, so.
Devin, are
Yeah.
you in Chicago yet?
No, but I'm getting the aura around me. I'm preparing myself for immersing myself in just diving into this deep dish, which is apparently, per Dave is not deep enough. So
How deep is your pizza?
I agree. Shane,
Yeah.
are you willing to eat some Lou Malnati's or Giordano's or Pequods while you're here? Are you willing?
Of course. I mean, yeah. If we end up there, if the evening takes us to a buttery deep dish crust and a 45 to 75 minute wait for my casserole.
just gotta call ahead, right? Surely
Got phone ahead.
Wow, this guy.
Yeah, it's not complicated.
Let's just get a takeout.
It's a phrase you're going to hear around Chicago a lot. Just got a phone ahead.
You know what else isn't complicated? Heavy play.
It's not.
The card game accessory brand that's going to improve your gameplay and your game day and your Magiccon Chicago.
Oh yeah.
They're going to have a booth. They're going to be selling stuff. There'll be playmats, deck boxes, card sleeves, dice trays, all featuring the ergonomic mobility and protection of the EquipMag system. It's all magnets. Have you guys heard about these? Have you heard about the
It's
magnets?
entirely made of magnets.
What is a magnet?
How do they work?
Positive and negative forces, constant tug of war of space-time is
I don't
basically
know.
it.
Space-time is okay.
Marty, we got to get you back to your heavy play EquipMag system.
I do think electrons are involved.
They are.
Well, let's agree to that. Let's also agree that if you want to get some heavy play at MC Chicago, ask for Randy. Tell him the Dive Down sent you.
Yes, you must.
Please do.
You have to. Because, I mean, we're going to be there. Randy's going to be there. The whole crew, I mean, imagine much of the crew will be there. And maybe it's awkward. Maybe you're going to go there. You're going to be like, I just want a smooth transaction. I want to purchase this sweet, sweet purple dice box and like ruby deck box. And it's going to be weird if I say something. But that lets people know that you heard about them via us. And it works.
Shane, it's not weird. It's
not
also
weird
just
at all.
not weird. It's not weird.
I mean, I bet you they'll also give you 10% off your order. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
But they might.
It's only
they
weird
might.
if you make it.
Yeah.
They'll certainly give you 10% off your order at heavyplay.com if you use promo code TheDiveDown2024.
Perfect. I just, I know we're going to go longer than usual, as we do with the Heavy Play spot, but I just was getting my stuff ready for Magiccon, and I was snapping it together. I did a custom deck bundle. I have my, RFG Max? The dice box that has magnets on both sides. I snapped one box to one side. I snapped one box to the other. I'm good to go.
That's how you do it.
Stan, what are we doing on this week's show, though?
Well, on this week's show, we are, in fact, packing our bags for Magiccon Chicago. Sweet home Chicago, the city of big shoulders, the windy city, the second city, the third coast. It's cooler by the lake. A lot of puns for one modest town.
Keep them coming. They got 2 seasons in Chicago. Winter and construction, you know what I'm saying? Got any more?
That's a good one.
Hey.
So what are we doing to prepare? We're checking in on Modern, Pioneer, even Standard, because
I was not told this.
we're going to spike all the side events, the Format Cups, and the Opens taking place at McCormick Center this weekend. And we're also going to take a look at the results from the first NRG Series Open of the year, which took place in beautiful Elmhurst, Illinois. And look, I was there. Maybe you saw the stream. Maybe you were there. Maybe you haven't heard about it yet. A murderer's row of competitors.
It was absurd.
We got some of the local hometown heroes from the NRG circuit fighting against members of the Magic Pro Tour who were in town for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, what? 9th place. This is a spoiler. 9th place was Andrea Mengucci.
9th on Breakers.
Okay.
It's pretty rough.
Yeah, 2%, baby.
Former world champion.
Constant world champion of my Twitter feed.
Someone got into their 8th NRG championship, okay?
Yeah.
Someone qualified for
That's
8th.
a lot.
I think that's all 8.
Golly.
Yeah, all of them.
Golly. As I said, I was there. I also did floor interviews. Now, at the time of recording, I have not listened to the recordings yet that I did on the floor. I keep forgetting to. So
Just wing it. It's fine.
we'll tease them up. And if you're hearing this, it probably means they made it to the episode. And if you're not hearing this, it means they're
Nothing.
not in the
Shane
show.
cut it.
It's going to be that
exactly.
awkward silence after we say, now we're going to cut to an interview with...
Andrea Mengucci. Oh, wait.
You guys ever hear those podcasts that say like, okay, and now time for a break, and then they don't actually have an ad break? They go right back to the content because like they didn't sell the ad spot or something like that.
Yeah.
I find that so awkward.
I feel
love
shame for those people.
Awkward.
I always just breathe a long sigh of relief.
And now it's time for the ad break, guys. So wait after this.
Yeah, there's no ad break here. But we do have some housekeeping. Am I right?
Oh, yeah, you're
So,
right. We do.
First thing, just a reminder, if you are coming to Chicago and if you would like to meet us on Saturday night at 7 p.m. at a place called District Brew Yards, we'll be there from about 7 to 11, I think. It was 7 to 10 is maybe what our reservation is, but I don't think they'll make us leave. Go to thedivedown.com/Chicago to get all the details for that. That is thedivedown.com/Chicago to come and hang out on Saturday night in Chicago.
And maybe you're saying, but Dive Down, that's when the Magic Modern Cup is supposed to be wrapping up on Saturday evening. At least one member of the gruesome foursome is going to be in the Modern Cup that will then lead a delegation. I've been saying this all week. I'm going to lead the delegation to the bar, which means at like 7:30, I'm going to text Dave like, hey, where are we supposed to go again? And Dave,
And I'm going to say, go read thedivedown.com/Chicago and figure it out yourself.
Well, at that point, you should just send him to the other side of the city, right?
I know my way around the city, Devin. That prank would not work on me.
Yeah.
You remember it?
He's got location lag.
What if you were already inebriated, though?
At the cup? At the con, there is free coffee in the press tent, and we do have press passes, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna be zooming.
there is a chance that, hey, if you're going deep on the cup or whatever, we understand. It's fine. Stan, if you end up not being able to make it because you're going deep on the Modern Cup, We get it. It's okay. But we will be there hanging out. At least I will be there hanging out in Shane. And, we'll see who else comes by. So far, there's about 20 people have said that they're interested in coming. That's great. If there's anybody else, just let us know. Please remember this event is 21 and up. Sorry for that, friend, but that's the truth.
I saw this name on the list, and I don't know how you say it because there's O's in it, like the number 0. I think it's like Duzerum Wake, and they're coming. That's what I read.
I don't know who that guy is.
Yeah.
What a weirdo.
We should probably not invite him.
Solid hang.
That can't be a legal name.
No, it can't be.
Duzero?
What is that? Wait, is that your Christian name? That's the name of one of our theme songs, isn't it?
That's the ad bumper and the ending from
The Dive Down.
Space Blood.
Yes. Okay. Space Blood. Thanks for letting us use your music. New patrons: Dominic B, Justin S, Colin M, Connor, and Sebastian. We have 5 new citizens of the Dive Down Nation. Thank you so much for your support. We truly appreciate. We've had a really good influx of new citizens of the Dive Down Nation. We're super happy to have you all. Dave, you said my call to action a few weeks ago wouldn't work. It's been a slow build. We have people keep coming on in. So if you want to support us, if you want to help keep us going, if you want to chat with fellow listeners of the show, patreon.com/thedivedown. We also have some comments on the Spotify. The one that I liked the most was Victor H saying that he was glad Stan is back stateside. I'm sure Stan appreciates that, Victor. I'm going to speak for him. I'm not going to even give him the window.
Victor, that makes one of us.
We have the store, thedivedown.com/store. Grab some swag. I'm going to be wearing my swag at Magiccon Chicago, and you will see some there. If you want to get some yourself, thedivedown.com/store. Mana Traders, long-term affiliate.
One thing. I am going to be wearing a piece of preview gear on Saturday nights and Saturday during the day at the con. So keep an eye out, and then we can talk about whether this fun merch would be something you would like to see on the store.
I think people like it already. I've seen it.
I've shown it to a couple people.
Okay,
it's a very cool pair of pants, Dive Down branded pants.
Dive Down Zubaz.
Yeah,
looks a lot like the fanny pack. Mana Traders, the Dive Down _3YO. We know that you won't remember that code. It's in the show notes. It's through the end of February. Okay, that's the housekeeping. Only 14 minutes. We did it. Okay, y'all. I know that we promised to talk about things that are going on in modern, Pioneer, Standard. I do want to talk about the NRG Chicago that just happened. So I believe Devin O'Donnell did some commentating on this tournament, aka Doomwake.
I did do commentary. I actually did. I was planning on doing we were scheduled to do just Sunday, like the morning shift, but it ended up where the person who was doing the second shift ended up getting a little bit sick, so I ended up covering for both shifts. So I got to cover the entire Standard Open, and that was a lot of fun.
Wow.
A lot of the people some of the pros who were there for the Pro Tour, I think they probably skipped on Sunday because they were playing they were testing Pioneer for the Pro Tour. But yeah, it was a great time. It was a really fun event.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I definitely want to talk about Standard with you because I have been paying more attention to Modern lately with the goings on there. So, but we know that it's still the RCQ format. People still are playing it, and I think it looks pretty interesting. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the 5K very briefly as a framework to talk a little bit about Standard, I think. And we've been having a lot of breakdown content lately. I don't really want to go super deep on the Pioneer 10K, but it's the first event of the NRG Series in 2024. The series is expanded a bit this year. They have like the sort of 2 halves of the year as like 2 seasons that you can be a point leader in. The top 2 point leaders from each season make it into the championship. The 3 at-large points leaders over the entire year. All of the people who win the 10K events. Steven Dykman, he's going to be invited to return to defend his title. And so the 10K event this weekend was Pioneer, and we can look at how Pioneer is faring lately following the release of Murders at Markov Manor. Is Azorius Control going to be as popular as we thought it would be? And the answer is yes. There's 197 players, and 17.4% of them played Azorius Control.
Oof.
Ugh. Yeah, I'm very curious to see if this metagame will kind of retain itself with the Pro Tour next weekend. You know, I kind of assume it's going to be mostly the same. I wouldn't be surprised if Azorius Control was even higher represented at the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
Given pros' proclivity for playing Control, I definitely think it's possible.
There was some interesting stuff going on that I want to talk about related to Lotus Field later. That I'm particularly sort of curious about because Lotus Field versus Control is not typically a good thing, but there are some interesting players around Lotus Field. So Azorius Control was at the top of the metagame, to my personal dismay. And the stock deck, more or less, is exactly what you imagine it to be. You know, there's Wandering Emperor, there's Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, there's little sweepers and big sweepers. You got your Temporary Lockdown, you got your Supreme Verdict, you got your Farewell, you got a bunch of counter magic, you have 4 No More Lies as the Azorius Mana Leak. You've got interactions like Get Lost. You've got Devin falling asleep. I agree. March of Otherworldly Light. You got your Memory Deluge, your Quick Study, your Dig Through Time for card draw. This is classic Control with some good cards, I think, or good cards if you like casting these cards. It had a 52.6% win rate, which is, not blow the doors off, but it's perfectly good. I thought some interesting variations looked like some people had Kahira, some people had Yorion, sometimes Narset was in the main deck, like George Jabor. You may remember him from a nice episode about Control with Stanislav. He finished 18th overall. This deck looks annoying to play against, and it did just fine this weekend. So, like you said, Devin, I think, we know that pros like these types of decks, and I think it's probably still getting its feet cemented under it as a Control deck has to in a format. So I'm curious where this goes.
Yeah, so I think the best, at least for the people who are playing Blue-White Control, the reason not only did it get the most from the new set with No More Lies, but the metagame overall, as we're going to take a look here, didn't change a lot. Now, a lot of people have reservations about playing Control in a new format, but if the metagame is largely the same with the same decks that we've seen, it's a lot easier to take that Control deck and tune it for the expected metagame.
Exactly. Right after it was Is It Phoenix? 15.2% of the room. It finished with a 55.4% win rate. Pretty darn good. Yeah, this deck looks exactly the same as it has been looking. After Picklock Prankster got added, it's pretty much been the same deck. Nothing new looks like it got in there from Murders. And more or less, this deck is humming right along. 55.4. What do you think is bringing it to this level? Devin, Stan, anyone who's playing Pioneer, is it just it's Treasure Cruise is not a fair card to not being legal in the format?
I don't know if I'd go that far to jump to such lofty conclusions. Treasure Cruise is definitely good. I think part of it is that the deck is pretty good against Control.
Yeah, that is true. I also think there's a little bit less graveyard hate, right? If that makes sense. It seems like there's a little bit less. Also, the other thing is Lotus is kind of the unwinnable matchup for Phoenix. So if people start playing decks that help push Lotus out, like Boros Convoke, Amalia, I think for the Lotus players, those have kind of been described as weaker matchups for Lotus. So if those decks kind of get pushed out, or if those decks are pushing out Lotus Field and then Lotus Field is not at the top, then Phoenix can kind of take advantage of that.
Rack mid. Up next, perhaps not surprisingly, perhaps a little bit surprisingly, 10.7% of the room, 19 players, 46% win rate. Overall, pretty poor weekend for Rack Mid. It looks like Inti is kind of like a new stock creature in at least a few copies in most of these decks, but overall it looks really similar to how it has for quite some time. Misplaced Ginger, Derek Pite was there playing Rack Mid, in from Toronto, huh? Maybe there early for the Pro Tour.
Yeah, Pro Tour.
And Derek finished in 40th.
Was that the highest finish?
That was not the highest finish. I was just
mentioning.
I'm just mentioning the Rakdos bid person.
The guy.
So I got to speak to Derek on the NRG floor. Maybe now would be a good time to kind of splice in his thoughts on the deck and what he's been working on with Rakdos Mid in particular.
That sounds ideal. Roll the tape.
I feel like the people probably know you as Misplaced Ginger first. And then they get to know Derek as they start to consume the content.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny, sort of introducing myself as Derek, and then people are like, oh, I was calling Misplaced Ginger, and then the people who know me as Derek, and introducing myself as Misplaced Ginger, them hearing other people refer to me as Misplaced Ginger is like the juxtaposition of that, the two sort of identities, I guess, is like kind of funny to witness in real time. But yeah, most people do know me as Misplaced Ginger.
I also think most people know you as a Rakdos mid player in many formats, and I think I noticed you're playing Rakdos today in the Pioneer Open. How's it going?
I just took my third loss, so not amazing. Two of my losses were against Boros Convoke, which I was not really expecting to show up this weekend, mostly because I was expecting a lot of blue, white, and Phoenix, and I think that Convoke doesn't do very well against those two decks, so got a little bit blindsided, a little bit surprised, but just learning curve. And yeah, the rest of the deck seems good. I'm beating the matchups I wanted to beat, so overall I think it's a good event, even though my result doesn't probably reflect that.
I feel like there's been a lot of ebb and flow with Rakdos over the last 2 years in Pioneer. Do you think it's as well positioned now as it was in the past?
Definitely not. I think early Red-Black might have not been the best deck, but it certainly got some of the most powerful tools in the format in the early growth of Pioneer. It seems now the other decks that were slightly behind it have now caught up. And so there isn't that much of a gap between Red-Black and the Phoenixes or the Blue-Whites or the other decks in the format. So I agree with you. Red-Black is slightly worse than it was, but I don't think it's worse enough where it's like not a good choice, if that makes sense. It's just, it's not as far ahead as it was before.
Do you have any new technology, like from Murders, or just a new spin today?
Nothing from Murders. Nothing really stood out. Unlike Modern, the Surveil lands aren't really doing that much, and unless I'm missing something, most of the cards are relatively low power for Rakdos. I am playing 2 Inties, but no Copters, just because I think Inti is a very powerful Magic card. And yeah, that's it.
Why no Copters?
I have found that although Copter is a very powerful Magic card, there's a lot of decks and strategies in the format that exploit playing Copter. So the play pattern of Copter is Copter, play a creature. You have to make sure that that creature resolves or your Copter doesn't die before it attacks. And then once you attack with this Copter, if you actually get to attack and you loot something away, it has to be like worth it, and then you're never actually going up in card advantage. So you have all these hoops you have to jump through to make your 2-drop good, and then there are not only like a lot of things in the format that punish that, whether it be like a counter spell for your 3-drop or a removal spell for Copter, you're tapping your creature, you're kind of time walking yourself, but also like it's very hard to actually get value out of it. It's not like Copter when it was in Standard or Old Magic where you can loot and Copter's just the most powerful thing. It loots, okay, that's amazing. Now there are so many cards, so many like late game effects where Copter gets invalidated really fast, or you can be doing better things on 2 mana. And so I think that Bankbuster is a bit safer, a bit lower power level, but it doesn't get exploited as easily. It's harder for the format to sort of interact with Bankbuster, but it also helps your game plan a bit more. You aren't forced to have to attack with your Copter, have to make these plays and hope your opponent has nothing. Gives you a bit more control over the game.
And now, do you think the difference between the Copter effect and the Inti effect is that, like, with Inti you can just decline to rummage? Or how do you feel about the relationship between those two pieces?
So the reason I'm playing Inti is a bit more of a nod to the whole sort of mid-range idea. There's a kind of famous Ari Lax tweet about Red-Black a year and a half ago where he said that it has no card selection, all these cards are bad, like you can't actually churn and get to the cards you need, and he's kind of being a bit facetious, but at the same time, like, it is right. Like, mid-range decks, you draw your cards, that's what you have. You Thoughtseize, you play your Doomblade, hope your opponent isn't like top decking. Inti helps smooth those wheels for when you need to draw some extra cards while also doing something that you normally do, which is attack, and it helps pressure your opponent. So when you have a card that like draws cards and functions very well, something naturally going on in the game, I think it's default powerful. You can decline to use the ability. It's not like Copter where like you feel like you have to, but it also makes it so your combo matchups are a bit better, because it's just, like I said, early threat, find your hate pieces, makes all your other creatures better, sort of thing. I've been seeing a lot of people be like, you play NT on 2 and you have to discard. I like to play NT on like turn 5 or 6, where you like play a Trespasser and then you attack, and now it's a 4/4 with trample. And there's not many cards in the format that block basically a hexproof trampling 4/4 that has an ability when it attacks. And if there is, then like just don't attack or whatever. You can still keep the NT combos with the Bloods very well. Which is a very powerful Magic card.
And now, are you playing in the PT next week?
I am, yeah.
I have to assume you're probably registering Rakdos again?
Yeah, I think I am 95% sure to register it unless something really, really weird happens at this point.
So, someone like you who, deck master, what does your testing process look like ahead of a tournament with such high stakes when, you're more or less locked into the deck?
Now, when I answer this, I want to keep, like, whoever's listening, like, keep this in mind. Like, I obviously have a very deep-rooted bias towards this deck. My testing process, I don't think, is necessarily a good one for the average player or for somebody who's trying to, like, play their first few PTs or even, like, their 100th PT or whatever. My testing process up to this point has basically been jam games until I can find out if Copter Bankbuster is better. When I solve that, then apply that knowledge into the deck against other decks in the format. But I don't really have much of a team. I've been talking with some friends closely and discussing things on like a one-to-one basis, not in like a whole group, and then just like playing a lot of red-black. It was kind of funny recently, a friend of mine, I asked him a question, he genuinely looked at me and was like, have you played any other decks leading up to this event? And I was like, no. And he's like, don't you think that there is some value to be gained in literally just playing 2 or 3 games with a different deck rather than your 1000th game with red-black? And I was like, yep, you're right. I'm not going to answer this question, though. And so I've just been jamming a lot of red-black. I like I said earlier, I think I've solved sort of the Bankbuster fits better in the deck. And yeah, the stakes obviously put a bit more pressure on it, but overall, it doesn't necessarily change that much for me compared to like an RC or something. It's all just like, I want to win my matches. I want to give myself the best opportunity to do so.
Stanislav, I didn't hear that interview, but I loved it.
I know. What was not to love? We talked about his different names that people know him by.
Boros Convoked, Doomwake just mentioned this. It finished exactly 50%. Deck still looks exactly the same as it has to me. Did very average this weekend, but hey, Boros Convoke's fun. It applies pressures that other decks can't really do, I don't think, in the format. So
Hey, it's got new cards. It's got Novice Inspector.
ooh, what's Novice Inspector?
Well, have you heard of this card called Thraben Inspector?
Yes.
It's the same card.
What? There's 2 Thraben Inspectors?
I know. I didn't mean to surprise you there, but
I forgot about that one.
I can't believe they did that to us.
That's wild. Functional reprints of Thraben Inspector. Why not just reprint Thraben Inspector? I guess Thraben is probably like what, lore specific to Innistrad or something?
Yes,
Probably.
it would be. Yes.
All right. I wouldn't know. Amalia combo. 7 players, about 3.9% of the room, did very badly. One, you can tell that the deck is not perhaps performing super well because it was a breakout deck maybe a month ago and is already down to 3.9% of the room. It had a 37.8% win rate. Woof. I'm so glad I purchased all the cards and have this ready to go.
I mean, I was going to say, people were kind of like, we're going to have to ban something out of Amalia. Does it just die super hard to blue-white control, or like what? What?
Yes.
Is that what it is? I mean,
that matchup is close to unwinnable, especially if they have main deck
lockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's over.
yeah, well,
The metagame force is conspiring against me.
Shane, it was bound to happen.
I mean, yeah. I'm still gonna bring it to Chicago. I'm not gonna like do any probably entry paid, just side event paid entry type things. I'll just like jam with some friends here and there. So, but The top finishing Amalia deck, 52nd place at 5-3. So what's interesting to me about this, and Devin, I'm sure you can speak to this, is that there's not truly a stock version of this deck. I think it's really because there's just like different tech cards that you can have in a deck like this, right? Like you can have your Fiend Artisans, you can have your Kellen Daring Travelers, you can have your Extraction Specialists, because they sort of have different roles and they have different times to shine. But no one's really aligning on what's shining particularly right now.
Yeah, and I think another part of that is people are still not sure whether they want to play Knight Errant of Eos or Collected Company. That's kind of like the big split and the big divide. And a lot of people just aren't really familiar, aren't really sure what they want to play in that slot. And I see you mentioned the Case of the Uneaten Feast here as well. Some people have been playing that, some have not. It's like, it's a good card, but it's not a Coco or a Night Hit, so it's a little awkward in that regard.
Yeah, I'll still play it. I still want to mess with it. I'm not going to see, my friends aren't the kind of people who would play Blue-White Control. So.
Not anymore. We're older, wiser now.
Yeah, we don't think we're that good. Lotus Field combo, 5 players, 2.8% of the room, 63.6% win rate. It cleaned up.
What? Gross.
Only 5 people. Well, here's what's surprising to me, though. It historically does not have a good control matchup. It does beat up hard on Phoenix. So, like, maybe these 5 pilots, like, ran hot. Maybe they dodged control. Maybe they knew what they were doing. Maybe some combination, some mysterious amalgamation of all 3 of these factors came into play. I didn't see anything particularly new.
Isn't there, like, the whole tournament math of if you win rounds 1 and 2, your likelihood of seeing control decks goes down because the control decks are so frequently in the, like, XX1 bracket? You know what I mean? So like if Lotus Field is winning rounds 1 and 2, then they're mostly just playing against other Phoenix decks, which were the other like super successful decks they're winning early on.
I love this theory.
This sounds like some spurious stuff to me, if you ask me. It doesn't seem very scientific.
Overall number of draws from Azorius Control was 10 across 31 players across the tournament. So
and that's what, 105, 217 matches. So
yeah, more or less.
It's like 2% maybe. Yeah.
So yes, I agree. I'm with you, Stan.
That 2% is my confidence interval.
2% is my confidence interval is like an incredible button to have or something. just to annoy people.
Put on the soundboard. Yeah.
I saw an interesting deck. Friend of the show, Dom Harvey, finished 43rd. And Dom was running a playset of Archdruid's Charm, which, if you've forgotten already, I would not blame you. Green instant that can search up a creature or land card. If it's a land, you put it into play tapped. If it's a creature, it goes into your hand. Also doing some other random stuff he probably doesn't care about as much. I guess if you want a really expensive naturalize, you also have that mode.
Was Dom the only person that you saw playing that, or were there multiple people?
It was the only person I saw, yes.
Stan, you talked to Dom did you talk to him about Lotus Field or just life?
We talked about Pioneer at large, not about Lotus Field in particular. So we'll drop in that interview maybe a little later when we're talking about the Pioneer format ahead of the MC. But I did not see his deck, so I did not know to ask him about this particular card.
Seems like an interesting piece of tech to me. For what it's worth, it
looks like Manguchi also has the 1 attracts of the 4 Archdruid's Charm, so I wonder if they maybe like found a list together.
Yeah, Manguchi's list was listed as Bant Lotus Field. Manguchi also had the 4 Strict Proctor. I don't believe that Dom had the 4 Strict Proctor, or did I miss it?
Let's look at Dom. Dominic Harvey Lotus Field combo. No Proctors, so he's blue-green with the attracts and the Archdruid's Charms, and it looks like Mengu was Bant with, the same thing, Charms in the Atraxa.
Interesting. I like this. Let's see where this goes. Is it in Soul? 4 players, 2.25, exactly 50%. Not a huge sample size here. In Soul seems like it's back a bit. It's got 4 players. Inti's in the deck now, so that's cool. You go, Inti. You go in different decks. I want to go on record saying I liked Inti, by the way. Bant Lotus Field's up next. Also 4 players, 62% win rate. It does help if Andrea Manguchi is on the deck, but really close to the same win rate as Lotus Field combo overall. I'm not really sure why they're distinguished here. I think they're very similar decks overall. It's not like it's like the Azorius Lotus Field where it's like trying to be a weird control deck. This is essentially Lotus Field. It's Lotus Field's weekend. We're just here to enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, if Phoenix is going to put up this much of a win rate and put 5 in top 8, then you want to be the Lotus Field player. Although, that being said, spoiler alert, Lotus Field did lose to Phoenix in top 8. So.
Oh, wow. That's, man, some days chicken, some days feathers. So overall, it's about 63% of the meta. That's like above 2% representation there. So outside of that was like Gruul, Dex, Greasefang, 5-color Enigmatic Incarnation, Boros Heroic. Mono Green Devotion had 1 pilot listed, so that deck must not be doing very well.
They're trying.
Who knew? Here is our top 8, and stop me if you've heard a bunch of these names before. This is 2024. I'm not looking at notes from 2023. We've got Connor Mullally on Is It Phoenix. We've got Adrian Inigo Tostet on Lotus Field. We've got Nam Dang on Convoke. We've got Matthew Hoey on Phoenix. We've got Taig Tajali on Mono White Humans. We've got Max Kamenowski on Is It Phoenix. We've got Charles Lampos Kakidis on Is It Phoenix, and we've got Will Kruger on Is It Phoenix. So, a bunch of names that you have probably heard before. Good players are good, but we also have 5 players of Is It Phoenix, 5 copies of Is It Phoenix, 5 players on those 5 decks in the top 8.
Shout out to Charlem Post in 7th. A lot of people may not recognize the name, but that's Magic Online user Mogged.
Oh.
If that rings a bell.
Yeah, that does ring a bell.
So, and like I said, Andrea Mangucci was 9th, missed the top 8 by breakers. He's probably also good at Magic. Matthew Hoey took it all down versus Max Kamenowski in a mirror match finals on Is It Phoenix. I will note, Hoey won last year's June showdown to qualify for the championship, and NRG reported that he has been in all 7 previous championships. I would suggest avoiding playing Matthew Hoey.
I believe that I have played against Matthew Hoey before in the past, and he was very kind to me when I made mistakes playing against him.
Who could be mean to you, David? Look at you.
I know.
Look in your fitness mirror and see the smile.
So, hang on, I'll be right back.
So yeah, that's Pioneer. I don't have any overall thoughts. I mean, Pioneer is the RC format. I mean, excuse me, the PT format, right? We're going to see more Pioneer next week. So what do you mean? Are we going to see more of the same? Are people going to finally be off Rakdos mid, or like some people just going to keep digging, into that trench a little bit?
It's weird because it feels like this really rock paper scissors where you have blue white, Rakdos, and Phoenix. And it feels like Rakdos should beat Blue White should beat Phoenix, and Phoenix should beat Rakdos. So it's like, obviously there's some things in between, but that's kind of what it feels like to me. But the key is trying to find a deck that is, maybe good against 2 of those, which I think that's the tough part about Pioneer right now.
Well, doesn't it seem like Phoenix is just kind of breaking up that paradigm and is sort of good against like a lot of the creature-based decks, since it's full of removal spells, and then is also able to kind of either get under blue-white often enough while, if not getting under it, like actually maintaining a long game thanks to Phoenix's being recursive, and you can play them from your hand or from the yard and sort of like juke the control strategy depending on what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess Lotus Field kind of throws a wrench in that too, where it's you don't really want to be playing Phoenix if a lot of people are showing up with Lotus Field, but then you don't want to be playing Lotus Field if a lot of people are prepared for it. So there's another wrinkle in that too. So it's really difficult.
Well, and like the thing about Lotus Field that I wonder about is like how many tournaments have we seen where a lot of people showed up with that deck? Like, doesn't it still sort of remain kind of like the deck archetype Masters deck and a hard one to sort of pick up casually, unlike Phoenix, which is albeit a control deck, but still like
a little bit easier,
fairly linear one, and you can sort of piece together what all the cards do because 12 of them just draw you a card.
I mean, I will say that, like, we're not talking about a casual environment in the Pro Tour, right? So, like, if people are testing hardcore and they're determining that Lotus Field is kind of it can either be designed to be like a control deck, or that, there's some sort of like leak in the control deck structure right now because it's so focused on creature strategies or something like that, and it can get in there. But I mean, I don't know, of course, but I wouldn't be surprised to see, yes, even more like 23% control or something like that. And then like people really thinking that they can like find an edge with the Lotus Field, but then is it Phoenix right behind Azorius control? I'm going to be surprised to see it even more top heavy than it is here, but I don't know.
Makes sense.
What would you be doing, Devin? besides Azorius Control, your favorite deck?
Right. Yeah. No, I would keep as far away from that deck as possible. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I have not played a lot of Pioneer over the past couple of months. But yeah, if I had to choose something, I mean, it's hard to go wrong with Convoke, just because the deck is, very, very powerful, very explosive. Got a new tool in the form of Inspector, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it really does help smooth out some of the draws, give you more gleeful draws and stuff like that. So I'd probably play Convoke and just, accept the fact that I just have to win the die roll against blue-white.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about a format you have been playing, as far as I know, which is Standard.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, we can perhaps talk about this more in the dive down segment, because I just wanted to kind of briefly go through what the decks at the NRG looked like. And I imagine that would be similar to what you see at an RCQ around you. What I saw really was Burroughs Convoke, Domain Ramp, but it looks like it has dropped in popularity by quite a bit, or at least in power level. Azorius Control, Esper midrange, some kind of like 4-color Legends concoctions, and like a bit of Bant Toxic, which didn't seem to take over the metagame as much as perhaps people were fearing. So am I missing anything that's kind of like, outstanding or more popular than it looked?
No, I mean, that's basically it. So just to kind of give a brief rundown, the big story of this weekend going into the NRG tournament was Boros Convoke. It was a relatively sort of a newcomer. It got some recent upgrades in the form of Novice Inspector, Case of the Gateway Express. There were people who played it before the new set, but that was kind of the talk of the town going into this weekend. It's like, is Boros Convoke going to be this dominant? Can people beat it? And it turns out that... just like in Pioneer, the answer to all things aggro turns out to be Azorius Control with some main deck lockdowns. And, it's funny because I was actually going through some dealers trying to find some cards that I was talking to Dave about this before we started, trying to find some cards that I needed for this weekend for the Standard RC, because the dealers have on-site pickup, and a lot of them were sold out of blue-white cards. So now I don't know if that's necessarily because of the Pioneer Pro Tour or because of the Standard 75K, because blue-white's very good in both formats, but keep that in mind. But yeah, I mean, it's, right now it's Boros Convoke and blue-white Control are kind of the two, 1A and 1B, I would say. And then past that, it's like everybody else trying to catch up to them. You have kind of the black mid-range decks. There's like a whole, there's branches of these mid-range decks. There's Dimir, Rakdos, Esper, Golgari, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and then the other thing you mentioned is Domain Ramp has really not been super popular as of like the past month or so. I've been playing a lot on Arena and the Moto Streets as well. So yeah, it's really right now it's like blue-white Control Convoke is kind of the decks that you have to beat, and then have a plan against mid-range, and then from there maybe a couple sideboard cards against Domain, and you should be good to go.
Love it. So our next event is April 20th weekend in Minneapolis. It's a Modern 10K and a Legacy 5K, so that'll be sweet. It'll be cool to talk about some more Modern, even though it's 2 months away. I feel like it'll be right when Modern Horizons 3 is maybe getting some spoilers. We'll find out.
In April seems a little early, but...
this is Wizards of the Coast we're talking about, my friend.
Fair.
All right, let's take a quick little break. We'll just have some bumper music, no ads, and we'll be right back with some Dive Down Convo. Stay with us.
And we're back. Very excited for this weekend, guys. It's going to be kind of the biggest Magic event that I've participated in since we were all in Atlanta together in the end of 2022, when Dave first met Doom and history was made.
I think this will be the biggest event that I've been to since Vegas. I'm expecting this to be since like Vegas 2015, which was a huge Magic event.
That was such a good Magic event.
It was, but
Did you guys go to the most recent Vegas one?
No. We've been to Vegas twice.
We went to the first one post-COVID with the big Modern Open.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
And then you guys went to one years ago.
We went, I feel like I went to 2. I feel like I've been there 3 times for Magic, but that can't possibly be right.
Yeah. We went to the Modern Masters 2 Grand Prix in 2015 that had 9,000 people in the Grand Prix or something like that.
And I pulled my sealed pool and dropped.
Yeah, I remember you did.
Because it had a foil Emrakul and a Tarmogoyf.
That's right.
So and that's when you still passed your pools, and I was just like, screw it. Maybe that was the day before. It was like a preliminary one. Either way, I definitely dropped from one of them. It was.
But anyway, the only reason I mentioned that was because I do think that these MCs are, they're more like cons. Like they're the cons that the Pro Tour is at. So I'm expecting to be crowded and busy, and to have a lot of people at it.
Oh yeah, it's Chicago. It's a Magiccon. There's the artist lineup is bonkers. The panelist lineup is bonkers. There's people from WotC that are going to be talking about like set design and world building and like the upcoming like few years of Magic sets and stuff like that.
And there's also going to be tons and tons of side events in every format imaginable.
Imaginable.
Right.
Indomitable.
And you know what I want to talk to you guys about today?
Please.
How to win your Magic Chicago Convention side event.
How about 201 split the last round?
That's how these work. Get the tickets.
I really want.
Yeah.
Well, not all side events are 3-rounders. They've got these cups. They've got these format cups. They've got a massive standard open. There's just going to be a lot going down. And I feel like because of how popular this is, whether or not you're playing in the Magiccon, like the formats have enough interesting things happening to them within the last few weeks, really since February 9th when Karlov Manor went on Magic Online or went public in paper, one of the two. There's been enough change-ups that there's still something to learn about like how to get an edge in basically any format you're playing at the moment. So what I've done is jotted down the events that I'm playing, the decks that I'm playing, and why. But I also looked at mtgmeta.io, some recent challenge results, just to get a sense of both what's good and what's popular, what you should consider picking up if you're trying to choose between several different options, and maybe what to keep an eye out for in case you're really not sure what to expect in the current environment. Before all that, though, I gotta ask, has anyone actually figured out how to navigate this Magiccon website to sign up for one of these
I haven't
events?
even tried, which I think I'm going to pay for. Definitely. I did go through the other day and like screen grab a bunch of tournaments I was interested in. I'm like, oh, this sounds good. Oh, this sounds good. And doesn't conflict with our fun listener event, Stan.
Dave, are you opening a pack or like a ho-hos?
Sorry, I'm opening sleeves. I'm working on sleeving cards.
No, stop sleeving. No sleeving while
right.
recording.
Only believing.
All right, no sleeving. Just believing.
Heave those sleeves.
The
No double sleeving. You can only
sleeve,
outer
Dave.
sleeve.
So I specifically, I went on, I'm not like trying to plant a flag and being obstinate, but like I literally was like, I'm not going to bother figuring this out. I'm not going to pay these, in my opinion, absurd like just fees for already paying for an event online. Like it's just, it felt annoying. And I mean, I'm there to enjoy kind of seeing people having a lot of schedule flexibility. I'm sure I can find some on-demand things if I'm really craving some Magic. So I'm just trying to keep it loose. But it sounds like you're doing the Cup. You're doing the Modern Cup, right?
Well, I want to do Pioneer Cup on Friday and Modern Cup on Saturday.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When is the Pioneer Cup?
At 3 o'clock, I think.
But how does that going to work with the scheduled like post-dinner party thing that we have tickets for?
I don't know.
Yeah, like the MKM the jam party,
The Cluedo, the open bar. I don't know. Well, it's really only if I'm gonna do really well and run deep and make a run at possible top 8 on Sunday am I going to like actually conflict with any of the party schedules. But if not now, when?
Yeah.
Is the question with these
If not
Magiccon
when-
side
All right.
events.
No.
Listen. I don't think people came here to hear us talk about scheduling. So let's get into this.
True.
There's 3 different formats here that we can talk about at this point, which is interesting
Yes.
because Devin brings a bunch of expertise and recent playtesting on Standard. So let's go through them. Like, what are we playing? I don't know if we can really tell people this is how to win your side events. Per se.
Oh, I definitely cannot
But
tell
I
you
think we
that.
could talk about the stuff that we will be packing with us to play in these different formats. And maybe even we can get Devin to say what he would play in formats that maybe he is not playing this weekend. But I have guesses. So Modern. Let's start with Modern. Raise your hand if you want to play Leyline of the Guild Pack this weekend. Is everybody raising their hands?
I mean, I want to, but they're hard to get.
Yeah.
So
that's the baseline right now still after last week, even though that we're seeing in recent challenges that it's still a bit of a split between Teamer Rhinos and 4-color.
I would say it's weighted towards Teamer.
Okay, great.
Yes.
And in spite of that, the four of us personally are still probably looking to play some deck that is using Leyline.
Okay, but which Leyline? Okay, because I think the secret power of Leyline, like I'm gonna be really cute. I'm gonna call it Leylinos. Okay, you're gonna deal with me saying Leylinos.
That's fine.
The Leyline Rhinos. I just went back on my idea because I can't even make myself say that. I can type it, but I can't say it. So Leyline Rhinos, Rainbow Rhinos. The card that I like most in that deck is still Leyline Binding. It is the get out of jail free card. It is the does everything. It hits wide. It hits cheap. It does not require you. I was saying in our group chat. I think it takes the deck from a tempo deck to a mid range deck. You do not have to worry about the temporal nature of your bounce. You don't have to worry about end of turn, I'm going to bounce this chalice so I can then slip in my cascade spell. You're just get out of here. You no longer have a chalice. It is gone. Well, it's mostly gone. It's hiding underneath this enchantment that I cast at flash speed for 1 white mana. And that's, I think, I've seen people on the challenges playing 4-color Rhinos without Leyline of the Guild Pact. And I think a lot of that is due to just maybe the reminder that Leyline Binding
this card's still legal.
Yeah, and good.
This is absurd.
Didn't forget.
And
to that note, though,
just
real quick, to that note, so you mentioned that Leyline Binding turns it from a tempo deck to a mid-range deck, but it kind of plays both roles, right? Because the fact that Leyline Binding is a 1-mana removal spell, you can actually efficiently double spell and kill, you know what I mean? So it's turn 4, you're normally your best 1-mana play with a Cascade spell as a Dead Gone. Now you have a premium removal spell that you can pair with that Cascade spell on 4.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking perhaps one of the definitions of tempo being paying less for your spells than your opponents are paying for theirs, right? And being hyper efficient, then yeah, for sure. I mean, I was sort of talking about the nature of Rhinos sort of being a get things through small windows. And then once the Rhinos are in the house, they're causing some damage, but you got to get them in there in the first place. And I think it just makes it a lot easier to do that. And I know, Stan, you talked about this deck last week. I played a good amount in the past week, and this deck, the Leyline Rhinos, feels pretty nutty at certain times. I think there's certain times it can feel clumsy, but I think some of that is in the mana base. I think you really have to know what you're fetching for. You really have to know what's left in your deck.
Yes, I mean I think some of that's always been true of Rhino decks. It's just harder to navigate those decisions in a 4-color version.
Yeah, for sure.
But
go ahead.
Hold on, your point about tempo versus mid range, I think so astute, because part of the definition of mid range is that it can play the fast game, it can play the slow game, and the Leyline of the Guild Pact into Sign of Draco openings, that's the aggro side of mid range too.
Yeah, that's your 5/6 Tarmogoyf on turn 2 or something, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm still at, just for the sake of exploring and being impressed by the sheer power level of those two cards. And to be honest, I wouldn't fault you for playing Domain to have access to the 3 rainbow cards in general, because I think that package is just kind of one of the strongest packages in Modern right now that we're only scratching the surface of, because there isn't a ton of incentive to play Modern outside of prelims and challenges before this weekend. And maybe we might see some interesting stuff coming out of these cups, in fact. Yeah. Depending on who's playing on those and if they're publishing results.
Yeah, I think I was just running hot in a bunch of my test matches, but you get to see the heights of the deck when you run a little bit hot. I had multiple turn 2, fully colored out Scion of Dracos that the opponents just really they scooped to. They have like what is Murktide going to do against that very easily? You know what I mean? Like it's just like the clock is too fast. They don't really have any. They don't have any edicts. They might have a bounce spell in there if they're really lucky. There's hexproofs. Doesn't matter. So and then I once had a turn 1 Scion of Draco off of a Gemstone Caverns.
Oh my God.
Gemstone Caverns on the draw with a Leyline of the Guild Pact, and then whatever land I had was a turn 2 Shardless Agent. So it's just like, okay, enjoy my
luck.
turn 1 Scion of Draco.
It's like Hollow One or something. Remember that?
It's perfect. Yeah, I mean, those of course are like the highlights, but then like I did have a number of games and matches even where it's like the sideboard games get grindy. The sideboard games, the opponents keep those hands with the Chalice, and I'm just, I have 2 Besagis in my 75. I've got 4 Leylines. I've got 3 Force of Vigors. And the Leyline just adds such a important removal component, like I mentioned earlier, where it just feels like you have to really try hard to stop me. Like I'm beating like Scales deck, like through like a welding jar and like a Chalice and an ensnaring bridge or something. I think it was like more of a like artifact combo type strategy, which is why they had ensnaring bridges. It's like you can't stop like the pile of interaction that I have against you now. It felt like, that's also I'm drawing the cards, but they're there to be drawn.
One thing that I just wanted to bring up real quick about you, I know you mentioned, Shane, the Murktide matchup versus the Scion Leyline openings. I've seen a lot of people play Hibernation in their sideboards, which you may not realize this is modern legal, but it's 2 and a blue, instant return all green permanents to their owner's hands.
Right.
So the Leyline making the Scion green, you get to bounce the Leyline and the Scion and the Rhino. So if you're having a tough time with Murktide, that might be a good sideboard card.
So this is Murktide's version of Hercule's Recall.
Yeah.
Basically,
I've seen people on Twitter also saying, like, don't do that. But I don't know if it's just a secret Rhino person being like, no, don't do that. You know what I mean? The other card that I'm looking at for what it's worth, and I think a lot of people are looking at, is still Pick Your Poison. I think that's just good in many different ways in Modern, but I feel like that's a reasonable card to have around against the Rhino decks, especially if you want to deal with Scion.
Yeah. By the way, Hibernation, not just seeing playing Murktide, the Teamer Rhino decks are whipping it out too. I think any deck with access to blue, like even Living End, could maybe consider it.
All right. So for what it's worth, Stan, what did you have to say about what you're thinking about for Rhinos right now?
Shane covered it well. Really what I want to say is, like, let's assume that people are going to play other decks other than Rhinos.
Oh, yeah. I have stuff to say. I'm not playing Rhinos.
Yeah. Well, what are you on?
You go. We're talking about Rhinos. Let's hear. You said that you're comfortable playing Teamer if you can't get a hold of ley lines, or kind of where's your mindset at?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Shane hinted at this, like the popularity of the deck is still weighed toward Teamer, but I think that might just be like the rate of innovation in Modern at the moment is a little
card
slower
availability too.
Perhaps.
No, Magic Online, right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, well, you can't go wrong with either decks at the moment, or if you're playing Rhinos. I think
you can't go wrong with renting from manatraders.com.
Yes. What I really wanted to talk about is just like looking at the MTG meta IO data since Murders dropped, the win rate of some of the other like most popular decks, and what's really sticking out to me is like the other strongest decks in the format.
Supposedly in this sample. Now, I will say one of these 3 is what I was just sleeving up while you were talking, and I hadn't looked at the notes yet. So the 3 decks that Stan is talking about in the meta IO link that he put together. Now, keep in mind, this is only 11 days of matches, right? This is from February 9th to February 20th to today. So it's a small sample size, but the decks are Scales at 60%, 5-color mid-range, or 4-color mid-range at 55%, which means Omnath, I'm assuming, and Yawgmoth at 56%. Now, Stan, which of those decks do you think that I'm sleeving up?
Scales.
Yes. So I am bringing Scales with me to play at Magiccon Chicago because I would like to be DQ'd from events, apparently. I don't know. I don't know, but that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You got enough dice?
I fortunately do. I bought one of those like my own Chessex tiny dice sets, so I should have plenty.
Yeah, Scales is interesting. Like it's a sample of 83 matches. Since Murders dropped that MTG Meta is pulling from, but like some of the bigger sample sizes, including Teamer Rhinos, like Scales is hugely favored with 65%. Some of the smaller sample sizes, which is only 7 matches, is it Murktide, where Scales is 71%. So I think the jury's still kind of out on like how good Scales is in maybe the post-scam world where it was really thriving. But some of this initial data suggests that it's still like a very solid strategy and probably the best artifact strategy we have at the moment.
Definitely the best artifact strategy. I do think that last week when we were looking at some of the larger modern events the last couple weeks, Scales hasn't really been a standout in those tournaments, and in particular the sample that we looked at of all the the last weekend's tournaments. It wasn't any particular like huge win rate there. It didn't look. I don't think it looked that amazing, but I'm still playing it right now because I think it has a chance to do pretty well, to do some broken things. And this sample just made me feel a little more confident about it, I will say.
The other deck that maybe took me by surprise, which like we chatted about last week a bit, but that's the 4-color mid-range decks, the Omnath decks, which...
Yeah, they're doing just fine.
And they're also leyline binding decks, which may have something to do with it being just probably the best removal spell in the format. They're 4 Teferi Time Raveler decks, which I think also has something to do with it because that's such a good card against like all the Cascade decks running around.
I think it's also one reason I forgot to mention that I think 4-color rhinos and like the leyline rhinos is another strong force in the metagame because it can fight. You can have that in your sideboard if you're playing rhinos, like the leyline rhinos. You can perhaps have it in your main deck if you're so inclined, even in 4-color rhinos or something like that. So I think that's a good way to fight against like the living end people are going to come at you, the other rhinos decks, things like that, control decks, all the things that you love about Teferi 3.
Yeah. Again, MTG meta, it's got 68% against rhinos and another 71% against living end. So it's just like, if you're worried about a lot of Shardless agents and Violent Outbursts, like 4-color might be a really great answer, especially if you can play fast, because these decks go forever.
Yeah, I don't see much chance of me picking up Omnath. I'm looking at these lists right now. Ugh.
Yeah.
You're not an Omnath fan?
I mean, I have a set. I've played it online, but I can't imagine. I feel like about this the same way that you feel about Blue-White Control.
There you go.
I think we're just kind of like, ugh.
Just look at the deck list and you just immediately want to just turn away.
Kind
I'm
of.
good.
You can't put so many good cards in one deck, can you?
Turns out you can, even without Fury.
I know. Wild.
I still love that these decks have one lightning bolt. They're like one lightning bolt to kill you with Ren and 6.
You never need more than one, right?
True.
The last deck I want to shout out that had a really impressive win rate is Golgari Yawgmoth, which had an average of 56%, being very strong against 4-color creativity, which is a reasonably present deck at the moment. Also really strong against Rakdos Scam still. Is it Murktide? Like 81% against Murktide. Looks like creativity is, it looks like Yawgmoth is one of the scariest decks for the Murktide players at the moment. And it also had like a surprisingly large sample against Hammer Time, which is not a deck that we've been hearing much about lately, but apparently is popping up enough that Yawgmoth played it 16 times over the last couple weeks and is 62% against that.
So I have a couple of other decks in my quiver that I'm planning to bring. I do want to play I raised my hand for the Leyline of the Guild Pact. I would like to play a Leyline deck if I can get a hold of 3 more. I have one Leyline.
You guys didn't pull the trigger, huh?
No, I just had already put in an order and then Card Kingdom was sold out. Ugh. So I will be stuck trying to buy them on the floor of the tournament maybe. Or I tell you what, if boxes of Karlov Manor are $99, I might be willing to pop in those.
You know why I'm not shelling out for them right now? I don't want
that?
to buy modern cards when it's not modern season for like the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Like
I can understand that.
If I'm grinding RCQs every few weeks, like that's one thing. But if it's just like MC Chicago and then who knows, what's the point?
So with that in mind, I did buy the other pieces that I needed for Domain Zoo. I know I gave it kind of a lukewarm review a couple weeks ago or last week or whatever, but I'm going to sleeve up what I have of that and just have it with me because I like having an aggressive deck that I can play, I guess Hardened Scales is an aggressive deck, but that's pretty mathy. So if I want to take a break, maybe I'll do some Domain Zoo and try to Tribal Flames people. The other thing I'm going to have with me is what I've been playing online the last couple of days, and that is Teamer Prowess by Bailey Sarkis from the SCG Con Hartford tournament, which Stan was nice enough to pick up 4 questing druids for me at Pastimes, perhaps? Or did you pick it up at the tournament from NRG?
No, it's from NRG, yeah.
From NRG.
Yeah. 4 druids with 3 different treatments.
Yeah, I know. Perfect.
Oh my god, come on.
It's the worst.
David doesn't care.
I don't care that much, but...
well, now that you mention it, I should do that for Spike. When I'm buying cards for Spike, I should just troll him and get 3 different arts.
Yes, absolutely.
Good call.
Yes.
Spike, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry, but I'm not really.
Spike Everett does not listen to our show, Devin. There's no way. But I do like this list that Bailey Sarkis put together, and it is kind of known for playing online. It's a great budget Magic Online list now, by the way. It's 110 tickets to play this fully powered Teamer Prowess list. It has not been going great on Magic Online for me at moment, but I still love lava darting people, and so I'm going to have that sleeved up just because that is who I am.
You got to lean into who you are, David.
Yeah.
I got a little shout out here. So I see that you put Tron in the notes here. Somebody did. And
yes.
I haven't been playing a ton of Modern here, but hear me out, okay? I just had this idea off the cuff. What do you think about Tron with Leyline at the Guild Pact and Scion?
Perfect.
So
we have seen Bluetron, for what it's worth. Mickey Turtle Power from our chat played Bluetron with that package, with the Leyline package in it, and went 3-2 in a league. For what it's worth.
What I like about it is you can actually, if you have Leyline, you can go play your Tron land on turn 1 and use your Tron land to cast your Stirrings, and then on turn 2 you can play your second Tron land and use your Tron lands to cast Scrying because your lands are a forest.
Right.
So it's actually like kind of insane. And it like unlocks the turn 2 plays for Tron, which are like, they don't have a ton of aggressive plays because now you actually get to play Scions. So you can like kind of attack people in ways that you didn't have before. So I don't know. It's like, it's just that idea that kind of popped into my head. But I don't know. It could be okay. I don't have a list for you.
I love the idea. I will say we have entered the meme phase at this point. Who is that player that did like burn with Oko in it? Do you remember that person?
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Whoever that was, like Blaze at 420 was, I believe, the screen name of that person. I saw a screenshot of somebody, or there was a 5-0 in the deck dump from yesterday that was just scam with Leyline of the Guild Pack and Scion and Leyline Biting in it. And it was like those 12 cards in scam instead of a couple other things.
Scam doesn't need this, but one thing I don't think we really talked that much about is how absurd it's so absurd to have absolutely perfect mana when you have Leyline out.
Yeah.
Like it's incredible.
I think it's really fun and cool.
Yeah, it feels real good, man.
Feels weird. Must feel weird in paper when you're tapping your fetches for mana, though. It's like, I guess you do that with Blood Moon too. So
feels strange.
It's just a better Blood Moon, basically, like a one-sided better Blood Moon.
Speaking of scam, I am still interested in the Harlan Fire Red Black Death Shadow list, but I cannot find any Stalactite Stalkers, so I will not be trying that.
Who's gobbling up all the Stalactite Stalkers?
Legacy players. Is my understanding. It's in Delver right now.
So did Grandmaster not have any?
No.
Oh, sad. I'm sure someone will have them on the floor of the Magiccon.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, because we know how well that went in Atlanta, like buying cards from vendors.
Yeah. So should we move on to Pioneer? Or Devin, are you Rhinos if you play Modern, or what's your mind? Are you just doing it?
Yeah, I'll never play anything but Rhinos. So give me Rhinos.
Yep. There you go.
Period.
All right, Pioneer. So we've talked a little bit from the tournament earlier, from the NRG tournament earlier, about what's going on in Pioneer, but we didn't really talk about what we would pick to play for what it's worth. Devin, I guess Devin said Boros Convoke was where his mindset was.
Yeah,
but
I think
the rest of us didn't really say.
I lean towards aggressive strategies in formats I know worse. And Pioneer is definitely a format where I do not feel comfortable really operating in it right now. I also think I'd want to try to go fast underneath Azorius control. I mean, I think we've mentioned this, but I think it's perhaps slightly underappreciated, like how bonkers temporary lockdown is, right? Like it's such a when you have effective sweepers at like, the 3 and 4 and like 5 and 6 mana slots of your deck that do like progressively more powerful things, it's just it's hard to compete with that, especially in like, I guess you can't be running Mana Tithe in your Pioneer Boros Prowess deck or something like that. So you're kind of in a tough spot.
Dude, if Mana Tithe was legal, I would play that card in Pioneer. I'm just saying.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I mean, like I just sort of, in a format that I would play as casually as Pioneer right now, I'd just be like, what can I do that's fast and fun and try to get under the slower decks and just like, do my thing and have kicks. That's what I do.
I think Stan might have a suggestion there.
Yeah, Shane. It's called
Soul?
Is It in Soul?
Oh.
And it rules. That's kind of my deck to play. It had a perfect 50% win rate at
Pristine.
the NRG
Clean.
Saturday Open, which I bet has a lot to do with the coin flip, because I played it in a Pioneer ReCQ.
Oh yeah, tell us about this.
It's like an RCQ, but there's an E in it.
No, I meant your experience in the tournament.
Oh, my experience, it was fun. I guess I made top 8, but the cut to top 8 happened at top 6, and I only had to go 2-0 to make top 8, which is cool, because it's a 5-round single elimination event. So by round 3, there were 6 of us. And I played in Seoul, and I was really impressed with it as an explosive aggro strategy in particular. It curves out really well with like a lot of 1-drops that make extra material. It's got a flying man that makes a map. It's got a Vidalgan Epicure that makes a blood. And what I was really impressed with is the Gleeful Demolitions, which I know people have been playing in the Convoke decks as well. I had never played with until now. And turn 3, going Gleeful Demolition plus Reckless Bushwhacker is one hell of a drug, especially if you've been just like curving out with like dinky 1/1s on turns 1 and 2, and then on turn 3 you Demolition and Surge a Bushwhacker. You're like threatening at least 12 damage right there.
Yeah, this is the drug that makes Boros Convoke powerful as well.
Yes. But the thing that I don't know that Convoke has Darksteel Citadels.
No, they're not doing that. Yeah.
No, but maybe you should.
Yeah.
Maybe you should,
no.
because if you target your Darksteel Citadel with a Gleeful Demolition, you just get tokens. You just get 3 1/1s for 1. You're not destroying the Citadel because it has Indestructible.
True.
He broke the format.
I mean, hey, when you got Ensoul in your deck too, I think that makes sense. You want to have an indestructible 5/5, or you want to have, get 3 1/1s for 1 mana for nothing. I mean, it's the best Hordling Outburst ever, right? That was a card that we played in Standard at one point in time.
There's no card better than Hordling Outburst.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stan, were you playing any copies of the new enchantment, the blue case?
The Filched Falcon?
Yeah, the Filched.
No, I was not. And here's what I'll say. Round 1 of this RCQ was a mirror match.
Oh.
Funny enough, it was a person who also had heavy play gear. So it's like we
The true mirror.
The
pre-game actions were complimenting one another on our accessories.
Yeah.
Was it Stanislav Sivka?
You were there. No. So yeah, pre-game we compliment our accessories, and then we each have like I think the exact same turn 1 of like Spirebluff Canal into this Spyglass Siren or whatever it's called, and it's just
Spider-Man meme.
Yeah, exactly. The jig is up.
The jig is up. And my opponent had the Curse of the Filched Falcon, and they cast it against me, and I in the game I saw it, and from reading the text on that card, I don't think it does enough, because I think like the material the material it provides can be provided by another 1 mana spell, but then like solving the case to pay 3 to make an artifact a 4/4, I don't know that that's better than just playing that like 3 mana creature that is like Ensoul on a body.
The skilled animator.
Yeah.
You could do the glyph too, the one that makes it a 5/4, and then you discover when it dies.
Perhaps. In any case, I was playing a much more streamlined version of this deck that's kind of like been stock lately, and I thought it was really solid on the play. especially. I thought it was really explosive. Shattering or shrapnel blast, like still an amazing way to kill opponents. You just like hold onto that card until you can kill someone, and eventually you just get there. Or you hold onto it until they try to destroy one of your artifacts, and then you counterspell them by dealing 5. Card is good. Deck is great. Shane, it's aggro.
Yeah.
You should try it.
Yeah, I mean, I have one. I kind of realized I'm leaving extremely early Thursday, and so I basically have tomorrow evening to get everything in place. I've got Leyline Rhinos ready to go, more or less. It's in a box, ready to go. I need to get Amalia finalized. The problem with Amalia is that I am a filthy net decker, and you can't net deck Amalia because they're all so different. I just have to pick my poison.
Just find one.
Maybe literally pick your poison, but yeah, I mean, just have to find the one that looks right. I don't know. I don't have time to test it. It's just going to be for funsies, so I shouldn't really care. I mean, I'm not entering a tournament with this, so I do want to go back to like my devoted druid days. I liked playing it on Magic Online when I tested it for some episodes, back in the day. So I will be having Amalia on hand as well. Let's play some Amalia versus Convoke, Stanislav.
Well,
Here's the Soul, rather.
Yeah. So Amalia, it has not had strong results in the data. I agree. I think it's fallen off a lot since the RC, surprisingly, because I thought it had a really good Phoenix matchup since the RC, but it's probably the rise of blue-white control that's been such a big problem for it. But if you can just like dodge the blue-white control matchups by winning your first couple rounds, according to my 2% confidence interval, like all you have to do is feast on Phoenix games. Like, that doesn't sound so bad.
I've got no idea. All I know is I want to play creature combo.
Looking at the MTG metadata for Pioneer, it's actually kind of slim pickings. There hasn't been a lot of recent data, and you have to go pretty far back into the sample size, so it's hard to kind of break out what has been good post-murders specifically. But if we look at the challenges, the Boros decks, I think, are still really strong and are appearing like at the top of results, and we have 2 of those. We have Boros Aggro as well as Boros Convoke, and I think both are probably viable choices if you kind of just want to like get under the control decks. And
now you kind of scooped me here, because this was supposed to be my surprise deck that I wanted to bring with me to Pioneer, but I didn't realize that Hamuda went back to back first places in challenges with
the heroic deck?
Heroic. Yeah, with heroic, because that is what I'm going to be sleeving up for Pioneer for this weekend. I'll probably only play Pioneer on Friday afternoon, and so it seems like fun break for my first matches of the weekend. It also has 3 Fugitive Codebreaker, I believe, Hamuda, because I definitely saw Hamuda win the first one on Saturday and was like, oh, sweet. Boros Heroic, let's do it. 2 Fugitive Codebreakers, okay. And then on Sunday, liked it so much that there's 3 Fugitive Codebreakers in here now. And I'm like, sign me up. New cards that I thought were going to be good in prowess. Let's try them over here instead.
Honestly, looking at this deck, I got all these cards. Maybe I'll bring this deck.
Hell yeah, Devin. You got 3 Fugitive Codebreakers too?
No, I got to get those, though.
I think they're still cheap, so.
They should be.
Devin's got the cards.
Yeah, but as people maybe remember, I've always liked this particular version. Everybody knows I like a red-based aggro deck. I've liked this deck. I liked this when it was a feather deck, and so I think it's great to kind of get in there and keep trying this. The other deck that I won't talk a lot about, but I will have sleeved up is Phoenix. Womp womp.
Yes, and Phoenix, I think right now is kind of like the deck you can't go wrong with, to be perfectly honest. You will be playing a lot of mirrors or long games against control, but I just get the sense that like Phoenix right now is the deck that the floor is never very low. It's going to do a very consistent linear thing, and if you lose to someone getting under you because your birds are on the wrong half of your deck, like, so be it. Or maybe you lose because you play against a lot of Lotus Field, but in general, there's just like so many games that Phoenix is able to steal by recovering from like a board wipe or some removal spells, or setting up like a slow control game and then like turning the corner when your opponent has run out of resources and you've cast a couple treasure cruises and you have a handful of cards and like 6 power in the air on the board and more power coming. you really can't go wrong with Phoenix at the moment. And for that reason, like maybe you have big crosshairs as well that you need to be aware of and pack your Prismari commands to like blow up some unlicensed hearses or whatever else people are trying to do to shut off your graveyard.
You promised me a Dom Harvey interview drop.
That's right. Yeah. Dom and I talked about Pioneer at large and his thoughts on the format and kind of like where his testing team has been at from a high level ahead of the MC and the Pro Tour that they're competing in. So let's have a listen to where Dom Harvey and his team are at right now.
I'm here in beautiful, sunny Elmhurst, Illinois, with friend of the pod, my former coach, to this day, still my favorite coach, Dominic Harvey, Pro Tour competitor, and now NRG competitor.
Is this favorite by default? Was I your only coach?
You were absolutely not my only coach.
Okay. I figured you were putting a fast one on me there, but no, you love to see it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I've had some wonderful coaches, but I feel like you were the only one who actually garnered results for me from our conversations. And I have to ask, we're in the middle of round 5 of the SCG portion of NRG, or of the Pioneer portion of NRG.
Yes.
Not an SCG. How are you doing? Are you garnering results?
I am garnering results for myself. 4-1 so far. This is effectively preparation for the Pro Tour, the Pioneer portion, next weekend, where ideally this would be a dry run for the deck that I had locked in days or weeks ago. In practice, this is part of a just desperate last-minute attempt to find something that I'm happy registering, which so far so good, maybe. Like if at this point, if I had to lock in something similar to what I'm playing today, I wouldn't feel too sad about that, which is progress compared to when I flew in on Thursday. So, yeah.
So today is Saturday. When are your Pro Tour decks due for the MC?
This Wednesday. Exactly when on Wednesday, I forget, so I'll have to make sure I double-check that before Wednesday rolls around. But yeah, we have effectively 3 days and a bit, and then obviously need to be up to speed on Limited in there as well, which I can't say I am at this point, so a lot of drafts to be done there, so still a ton of work to do. Unsure if I'm going to be able to justify coming to the standard portion of the NRG here tomorrow, which I would love to. It sounds like fun, but that's a valuable testing day, which probably could put to better use. So we'll have to make a game time decision on that one. But yeah, a lot of work to do, in a better mindset to do it than I was a few days ago as well. So that's good as well. So I wouldn't say I'm optimistic yet. Let's not take it too far. But yeah, not feeling too bad.
This is your first NRG, if I'm not mistaken.
I've been to a few here and there, just when they've been close enough to the Canadian border that I've been able to hop across and I've had the time and so on. So I played a few and obviously have commentated quite a few at this point. So familiar with the series and some of the names, but the events always have a nice vibe. You know, it's not the same like giant airport hangar style GP or SCG events from back in the day. And I do miss those to a degree, but there is also something nice about like it feels kind of cozy and intimate, and you see people that you know, even if you're only coming to a few, and yeah, just very, very good vibe, very, very good day out.
Do you feel like potentially doing well at an event like this, where you're in the featured match area occasionally, you're doing, or your results are getting published, like, is that revealing possible information to your PT testing?
Well, they haven't put me in the feature match area yet. Not sure what's up with that one, if anyone's retrospectively listening, I suppose. But in theory, yes. I mean, there is some discussion among the people who are playing next week and are going to this of, well, if we have something top secret, if we have valuable info, we're not going to leak that for something like this. So do you just play a mostly stock list of a known deck, you know, stock Rakdos, stock Phoenix, blue-white, something like that? Or is this a good opportunity to see if your testing has been in a bubble of sorts? Because it's very easy in even a group of very smart, very engaged players where you kind of all get in each other's heads, you start sharing the same assumptions, and there's this consensus that emerges around a deck or a card or a matchup or anything, which is sometimes it's nice to have that external check on what you're doing. And a tournament like this is a good way to do that.
So without asking you to reveal any of your secrets, state secrets, what do you think is the state of Pioneer going into the Pro Tour?
I think it's a little similar to how Modern has been over the past few months, where it has condensed a bit to where it used to be Pioneer was the Wild West. You could play against 9 different decks in 9 rounds. Now I think that's a bit less likely. You have this more defined top tier, Pioneer, Phoenix, Blue-White, and those are fair decks. And any matchup between two of those decks going to be back and forth pretty grindy. So if you want fair Magic, that is where Pioneer seems like it is at right now compared to some of the Green Devotion, Lotus Field, Wild West days back in the past. Whether that's a good thing is really up to you, right? It's subjective. But I think it's in a decent spot. I think whatever playstyle you prefer, that is on offer. So you like the mid-range decks, the control decks, like we said, you've got those. Phoenix for all of the Steam Vents, Volcanic Island people out there. And then if you like combo, you can play Lotus Field. You can play some of these off-the-wall style decks. Isn't much in the way of like classic aggro at this point, but that's basically true across most of the formats, so I don't dock Pioneer too many points for that, but you can still play Convoke. There's a bunch of the tribal decks, the Gruul deck, like there's stuff there. So whatever you want to be playing, like Pioneer has that for you, and often several good options in that space. So yeah, I think on that metric, which is not the only one, it's looking pretty good. I do wonder if there's this tension between Pioneer as this atonal format where you can buy into a deck and master that deck over time, and next time Pioneer season rolls around, you can go back to that, and that's a safe investment, versus you want there to be some churn, right? So if in a year it's still Rakdos and Phoenix and Blue-White, like is that the best thing? Probably not. So those are two really tough things to balance at the same time, and it's hard to do that intentionally because you can aim cards at Pioneer, but you don't know if they're going to hit or miss or overshoot, and now something has to be done. You've done your job too well. So it's a tough job. I think Pioneer right now is fine. It's good. I've enjoyed testing. Hopefully we'll enjoy playing in the PT next week, watching the PT coverage as well. So yeah, I think it's fine.
What do you think it'll take for you to top 8 2 PTs in a row?
Having some kind of miraculous epiphany about Pioneer in the next day or two, and then also figuring out draft and just bumbling my way through that. So, and a lot of luck. It kind of took a bolt from the blue, this meteor strike last time to shot me into the top 8. So something like that again, I wouldn't turn down.
So you mentioned you don't feel like there's a tier 1 aggro deck in the format right now. I'm playing in the Pioneer RCQ right now. I've got an aggro deck for you. It's a little something called Is It in Soul? Yeah.
Well, is it though? That's the thing. Because on paper, that deck looks great to me. Yeah, it's got a lot of mana sinks, got some nut draws. You're always using your mana well. Low curve, got some nice interaction. You can just punk people out of nowhere with Ensoul and Shrapnel Blast and stuff. Then I test it, and it's just something isn't adding up. It's less than the sum of its parts. And when you then look at the matchups where you're Blue-White with a bunch of temporary lockdowns and stuff, and Lotus Field and these other things, it's tough to know what you really want to play against, and then there is some stuff which you really want to avoid, and so that when you frame it in those terms, it's a bit of a risky proposition. It's a cool deck though, it's a fun deck, and it's the kind of deck which you can rock up to an event like this with. You're going to have a good shot. It's a powerful deck at the end of the day, so if that's your playstyle, that's there for you, and among many other things.
What do you think of beautiful Elmhurst, Illinois, and are you impressed by our suburban sprawl?
Yes, I can't say I've got to experience the sights and sounds very much. It's been locked inside all day. It was a beautiful sunny day. I was told to expect rain and snow and polar vortex again, but so far, so good on that front. It's always funny with these things where Mundelein, people joke, is like the capital of Magic in the Midwest these days. Not Chicago, Mundelein. For the people who know the law there, and more generally, we're very used to. There's a Granby in New York, but it's in New Jersey, which actually means Secaucus. And for all of these larger metro areas, you expect to be, trying to take some kind of car because there's no public transport up to the suburbs 40 minutes away. That's just part of the experience at this point.
Last question, and again, not going to ask you to reveal any state secrets, but do you
don't have any?
Well, okay, so maybe that's the answer.
Maybe Vadrock, but don't ask me about that either until the PT's over.
I guess I'm curious if you think there's a potential for the Pro Tour crowd, competitors, to actually unlock something new. Is there something in the format that is maybe hiding within the shadows? Is Murders a part of that?
I think, there's always stuff looking, and any new set, they've done a good job recently of, they seed it with a bunch of these cool build-around cards, which probably most of them are going to fall flat, but if there's one diamond in the rough and you're the one to figure it out, maybe you take the tournament by storm. And Murders definitely has a bunch of those. And then, more broadly, if you go back to this time last year for PT Phyrexia, your Pioneer Pro Tour, return of the Pro Tour system, as we know it today, then you saw a bit of everything across the board. So you saw the decks that you expected to see, like Rakdos and Phoenix and so on, but you also saw really interesting tweaks or improvements to existing decks. So Lotus Field, got this big overhaul at that tournament. And then there was some stuff just kind of coming out of nowhere as well. So I don't think people had creativity on their radar too much coming into that event, and there are still a bunch of different ways you can build that deck. So yeah, I hope for a little bit of everything there once again. If we end up watching like two of the best in the game play blue-white mirrors or Rakdos against Phoenix in the top 8, not going to turn that down. But for me, I'm someone who's always rooting for that like bolt from the blue to take things by surprise. Not going to be a part of that yet, it looks like, but never say never. I've got 3 days left to figure it out.
So I think those are kind of Dom's thoughts on Pioneer. You've heard our thoughts on Pioneer. There is a standard opening happening this weekend as well. I think it's like a 75K open that, Devin, are you playing in that right now?
Yeah, that's actually currently that's the only event that I'm signed up for. So, hopefully everything goes well. If that doesn't go well in the main event, then maybe I'll try to play some side events. Maybe join the cup with you on Saturday if day one doesn't go too well. But yeah, I've been basically focusing my entire testing for the better part of the past month and a half on standard, with the RSQ season coming up and this event coming up. So I've been playing a ton of standard. And, it seems like the metagame is pretty diverse right now. I would like to believe that there's been a lot of shifts. Like earlier, kind of towards the beginning of the year, it was more Esper, Rakdos, Golgari, all the mid-range decks. And then we had, like I was talking about earlier, that kind of burst of Convoke with the new set coming out, Novice Inspector, Case of the Gateway Express. That's the one. Yeah, I knew the name. And with Blue-White Control as well, everything is just kind of, it seems like it's almost at a point where it's very cyclical, where, Convoke does well one weekend. The natural response to Convoke is Blue-White.
I love that weekend.
Natural response to Convoke is Blue-White Control, and then this is kind of the next point. We want to see what's going to happen this weekend. What is good against Blue-White Control, and I'm pretty excited to play.
Now, Devin, we talked for a little bit before camera because there has been some discussion on Twitter, or maybe kind of thoughtful monologuing from you on Twitter, I suppose, trying to figure out what in the world you're going to play.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, everything that I play, like, nothing feels super bad, but nothing feels super good. Does that make sense? Where it's like, I don't hate any of these decks per se, but I'm trying to find, and maybe this deck doesn't exist, but I'm trying to find the deck that feels like it has a good matchup against everything, which, that probably doesn't exist, but I've been playing a bunch of different stuff. Initially, I was super high on the Convoke deck, but there's a couple problems with the Convoke deck. The biggest one is the mana base, where in Standard, we have a lot less access to dual lands than we have in Pioneer and Modern, and for lack of a better term, the mana base in the Standard Convoke deck for the spells you were trying to cast is basically unplayable. Right. You have Battlefield Forge, which I've joked on stream saying this is the best card in the deck because when it's in your opening hand, you actually get to cast your spells on time. But you're playing Cavern of Souls, which because your deck has 16 1-mana cards, you have Novice Inspector, Voldaren Epicure, Warden of the Inner Sky, Gleeful Demolition. You need an abundance of untapped lands. And notably, Cavern of Souls, it's basically, think of it like a pathway where you have to choose either vampire or human, depending on what your hand is. And if you choose...
What I have to choose every morning, Devin.
Well, vampire or when you wake up.
Yeah,
exactly.
Which am I going to be today?
Are you human or are you vampire?
Exactly.
Always vampire, honestly. No. But yeah, it's just like the mana is just super awkward where you're trying to cast these 1-drops. Cavern doesn't cast the Gleeful Demolitions. You have to play Thran Portal. I don't know if you know what Thran Portal does, but if you don't know, you probably don't want to know, where it's basically like a fast land pathway City of Brass where you have to choose a color on ETB and you have to pay a life when you tap it for mana. So it's a pretty horrendous card, but you need to play it to make the mana work. So that's kind of issue number one. And then issue number two is if everybody is prepared for Convoke. I mean, I've seen sideboards over, for various mid-range decks like Rakdos, Golgari, and that kind of stuff. I've seen sideboards that have had 4 Path of Perils. It's almost like if people want to beat Convoke, they very easily can. So
risky. You like the deck, but it's risky.
Right, exactly, yeah. So, and, it definitely has those extremely high roll draws where, for example, I killed somebody on turn 3 today, where you just go turn 1, either Inspector or Voldarian Epicure, turn 2, Gleeful Demolition, 1-drop, Knight Errant of Eos, turn 3, Recruiter. That's just lethal damage. And, the deck has the capability of doing that, but again, it's extremely high variance. The mana's a little bit awkward, not great in post-board games, so that deck has its flaws. And then I kind of dabbled into mid-range decks. Like, I've been pretty high on Golgari mid-range, which is... Now, a lot of these mid-range decks, Dimir, Rakdos, Golgari, it's basically just all of the same black cards with a very, a slightly different splash color, where the core of, you say Deep Cavern Bat, Cut Down, Shieldred, Gix, Go for the Throat, and then sometimes Archfiend of the Dross, sometimes Preacher of the Schism, and then splash whatever other color you want to splash.
Devin, can we talk a bit about Gix? Because I feel like Gix has slowly crept up into being a meta-defining card. What is it, do you think, about Gix right now that is making it so powerful in the format?
So it kind of depends on the surrounding cards, right? So there are some decks that, like, Gix is a lot better in, I think it's at its best in Dimir, because Dimir is playing Spyglass Siren. So ideally with Gix, you want to be playing like cheap flyers, Spyglass Siren, Deep Cavern Bat, Fairy Mastermind, Malcolm, things like that. And that's kind of why it feels like it's at its best in the blue-black core. But, you can imagine, right? If you go turn 1, 1/1 flyer, turn 2, 1/1 flyer, turn 3, Gix, attack for 2, draw 2. If you're playing any sort of like fair adjacent mirror matchup, and you draw 2 cards and play a 3/3 on your third turn of the game and you're on the play, like, it's almost impossible to come back from that. Even if they kill the Gix, you're already up 3 cards because you got 2 off the Gix and the Gix traded for a removal spell. So in these games that are a lot more about attrition and resource management, anytime you get to be up 2 cards in a situation like that, it's just so unbelievably backbreaking. Yeah, that's kind of why Gix is so good. And, it kind of translates to the core or how I'm building these mid-range decks. So for example, in Golgari, because I don't really have any additional 1-drops. It's just the 2-drops, 3-drops, and then Shieldred, and that's kind of where the curve stops. Gix is worse in that deck because there's no 1-drops. The 2-drops don't necessarily have evasion like Dread Knight and Sharp-Eyed Rookie. Those, don't. I mean, Dread Knight kind of does. It has trample, but so that's kind of that. And then in the Rakdos deck, it's a little bit better because the Rakdos deck has Inti. So with Inti, Gix gets a little bit better where you can turn 2 Inti, turn 3 Gix into their, maybe they have a 2/2 or even a 2/3 or something. You could attack the Inti into that, discard a card, put a counter on it, get a big swing there. So in the Rakdos deck, I typically only have, I think usually maybe 2, sometimes 3 Gix. And then in Dimir, that's the deck where I really want to play 3. And I've even considered playing 4 copies of Gix in Dimir because of those Spyglass Sirens. And sometimes they even play Fairy Dream Thief as well. So that's kind of where I'm at with those mid-range decks.
So have the Rakdos mid-range and the Golgari mid-range kind of evaporated over time?
I mean, it's tough. So the strengths and weaknesses for each of the mid-range decks is kind of dependent on what you expect to play against. So the reason that the reason that Golgari fell off a lot is its matchup against Domain is much, much worse than the other mid-range decks. Because Golgari does not have as fast of a clock, so it's harder to kind of close the game out before Domain starts casting Atraxas and whatnot. Rakdos has a faster clock, but less disruption. There's no counter magic like Esper or Blue-Black. And then Blue-Black or Esper, I think, has, of the mid-range decks, probably the best matchup against the Domain decks because they get counter spells and Tishana's Tidebinder. And Tidebinder is probably one of the single best sideboard cards you can play against Domain, because it's a flash threat, which plays around their sweepers like Sunfall and stuff. It counters Leyline Binding triggers, and it counters Atraxa triggers. So that, as of right now, I just made an order for a lot of the Dimir cards that I was missing. So if I had to choose something right now at this time, if you put me on the spot, I think I'm playing Dimir, but maybe that'll still change tomorrow.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, it looks like it looks like a fun format. I've seen you play on stream, and it looks like, fun things are happening. It's just one of those things where, because I'm not paying attention on a regular basis, I just look at these decks and I'm just like, I have no idea if these cards are good or not. Like, I have no idea what, like, because Standard just involves cards that are just changing more frequently. You know what I mean? And that's like a pro and a con.
Yeah, I mean, as far as these decks are concerned, like the blue-white control, that's a relatively new deck, kind of just popped up with the printing of Normalize and whatnot, and the prevalence of Boros Convoke. Bant Toxic used to be very good. Bant Toxic was a lot better when people were playing more Domain, because that matchup was basically unlosable for Bant Toxic. But now that the format has shifted less towards Domain and more towards like Boros and Blue White, Bant Toxic is much, much worse against those decks. So we've kind of seen Bant's kind of fallen off a little bit. Esper's, that's kind of like the default deck. A lot of people ask me, why don't you just play Esper? And I don't really have a good answer to that question, but I don't know. I just have, for whatever reason, in this specific Standard format, I just kind of have a general, I just don't like playing the 3-color decks. The mana's, in Standard, the mana's generally a little bit worse. Now, that being said, the Esper deck still gets to play 8 fast lands. It's one of the few decks that gets to play, Seachrome and Dark Slick Shores. Side note, I don't really understand. I don't know if there's maybe like a lore thing, but why do we only have half of the fast lands in Standard? That doesn't make any sense. I don't know why.
You mean, why do we not have the like Spire Bluff Canal, like the ones that are in Kaladesh?
I would kill for an Inspiring Vantage.
It might be. I've actually heard several people mention on Twitter that they would kill for a good red white fast land. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. I mean, I think that they just do that in Standard sometimes, where they only have half the cycle of these things at a time. It's a little bit more unusual that we have all of these surveil lands at the same time.
Yes, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that too.
They dropped 10. Yeah. They like never do that.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it's coming soon in the next couple of sets, but maybe Outlaws of Thunder Junction's going to have Inspiring Vantage and all those ones in there. Botanical Sanctum in the desert.
One thing I will mention, on your decks to watch out for, you put Azorius Tempo, Domain, and Mono Red. Listeners, if you're listening to this and you have not made your deck selection and you're playing in the 75K, please do yourself a favor and don't register Mono Red.
Is it that bad?
It's really bad. I mean, it was decent against. That was the reason to play Mono Red, was similar to Bant Toxic. It had an insane matchup against Domain. But I think that Mono Red is relatively far behind Boros Convoke, because it's like they're doing similar things, but the Boros deck is just much, much better at killing them before the red deck can kill the Boros deck. So it has like the Boros deck is much more better nut draws, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure that the Mono Red deck is that good against Blue White, where the Blue White deck has a lot of efficient cheap removal, like Get Lost, Lockdown, all that kind of stuff, a bunch of sweepers, and they're like sideboarding additional creature threats and stuff like that. So I just think that Mono Red is in a really, really bad spot right now.
Yeah, it's too bad. Too bad.
Right. Love the overview Standard. Interesting new dimension for us to have right now, especially since it's the RCQ season, or for it for sure. So that's great. And Devin, we're going to be pulling for you in the 75K for sure. So
let's go. Okay, 2 things. 1, we've lost Stanislav. His internet seems like it has gone south. So if you're not hearing Stanislav, that's because you need internet to record a podcast like this, unfortunately.
Do you?
Well, I mean, we could do it in a room. We have done live pods. I don't know what we're gonna do in Chicago. I imagine we'll be having too much fun to record a podcast.
I think I might put in a motion to skip next week even.
Ooh, oh yeah, good point. Love it. I love this idea, Dave. We rarely do that. We rarely have the non-holiday skip, but you never know. Stanislav is always just like, no, I'll just record an entire episode with this person and see what happens. Okay. Stanislav also recorded an interview with Christian Calcano. Apparently, it was concerning Pioneer. So I'm going to drop it in after the end of the Standard section. So we'll see what happens there. We might edit it. We might move this around because it's completely non-linear editing.
I'm here with Christian Calcano, Pro Tour Top 8 competitor from PT Barcelona and before. Have you top 8 at a previous Pro Tour?
Yeah, Almonquette in Nashville in 2017. That was my first one.
And this is your first NRG, if I'm not mistaken?
It is, yeah. It's been fun.
Have you been to the Midwest before? Have you been to sunny Elmhurst before?
I don't think I've been to Elmhurst, but I have been in the Midwest a bunch, but mostly during the Grand Prix days. Those are the events I travel to the most. So just all the Grand Prix and the Pro Tours. That's what I played for the most, last 10 years before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. So what were you playing today at the Pioneer Open?
Yeah, I played Boros Convoke. I just wanted to try it out just because I wanted some reps with it and see how it did in the tournament. It's an aggressive deck. And, I had a good time, but it didn't go well. Played against one of the worst matchups, Amalia, and then had some, not great draws against my other matchups. So, yeah, I will say it's very unlikely I'll play it at the Pro Tour.
What do you like about Convoke now, or at least how do you think it's positioned in today's Pioneer?
I don't know. It's hard to say. It's very swingy deck. Obviously it has its variance and it has a fail rate. I thought maybe now with the Novice Inspector, the fail rate would be a lot less than before, but I don't know. It still kind of feels like maybe not the best position. And aggro in general is just tough in Pioneer, especially with all the Amalia decks and such. Even with the blue-white keeping those in check, I still think it's an uphill battle for aggro decks in general.
I feel like the chatter these days is that blue-white's maybe the best deck in the format right now. Have you felt that way?
It's certainly, certainly one of the more popular decks. It's obviously very good. But the thing is, it's just a really hard deck to build properly, and that's kind of been my issue with it. And obviously you have the time concern and such. So it's definitely tier 1 and one of the decks to beat. Basically you have to, any Pioneer tournament you're going to play, you have to factor you have to factor in your blue-white matchup and stuff. So I'd say it's pretty good, and yeah, it's one of the top decks.
What do you think it's weak to, or how does anyone try to beat blue-white these days?
That's a good question. I don't know. I kind of feel like the only matchup it really crushes is Amalia, and then I think at least the other decks are maybe either even-ish or slightly favored, slightly unfavored, etc. Like Lotus, Phoenix, Rakdos, those decks. Generally, the best way to beat it is to be aggro, but I don't know. I had a tough time because, they have lockdowns and verdicts and stuff, so they definitely have, they have plenty of answers against the aggro decks. So obviously Thalia is one of the best cards against them, but I never drew that one. But yeah, like I said, with the Amalia deck running around, it's really hard to play aggro. So I think that's probably one of the big reasons why blue-white is also doing as well as it is.
Yeah. How's your testing process gone for this Pro Tour?
Just testing the same guys I've been with for Worlds and the last Pro Tour, which is Team Worldly Council, which is a group of, I would say, mostly Europeans. And yeah, it's been fun. We've been testing online a lot, doing some drafts, of course, and constructed. So, but we still have another, because today's Saturday before the Pro Tour, so we still have another, say, 4 full days or so to test for the PT. So, or I guess maybe 3 full days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, yeah, because we lock in on Wednesday at noon. So yeah, we still have some time, and we have a house with a bunch of players, and we're going to be, testing everything and see what we think is best for next week.
Let's talk briefly about Chicagoland. Let's talk about Magiccon Chicago. What are our big plans for the weekend? We have the Clue after party on Friday. That's going to be awesome.
Yes, we are going to the Clue after party mostly out of an interesting fascination with the cross branding of Clue and Magic.
I mean, that's an open bar.
I'm hoping Tim Curry's going to be there in his Mr. Body from Clue the movie outfit, perhaps.
I want him to be as like the Russian general.
I know, the Russian general from Command and Conquer. Yeah, it's very good. Why not both?
Wow, Dave.
Why not both?
Wow, just man, just stomping on my throwback.
I love it. I do love that, though.
Space.
But now I'm upset and I'm going to space. Yeah, exactly. All right. So yeah, we are going to be heading to the Clue after party on Friday. Then, as we said at the beginning, go check out thedivedown.com/Chicago for our Saturday after party, and then not after party, meetup that's in the evening is what that one is. And then other than that, you can see us around. If you want to hit us up on Discord, it's probably the best place to do it, or you can tweet at us to get our attention as well at the Dive Down on Twitter, which I refuse to call X.
Yeah, just tweet at us or give us a DM on Twitter. It's a good way to reach us.
Yeah.
And
we will be around all 3 days is the plan.
Yeah,
so.
And feel free to. I am. None of us are that. No one's going to be bugging us enough that you coming up and saying hi would bother us. Do you know what I mean? Like just feel free to come up. Just be like, hey, what's up? Cool. I've listened to your podcast 3 times. That's all I need. That'll make my day.
Love to meet new people. Just feel free to come up and say hi.
Maybe you'll end up on their podcast too, Devin. You never know.
Sweet.
All right. Shane, take us home.
Let's wrap this one up. Okay, cool. So hopefully we'll see all y'all in Chicago at the Magiccon if you're there. But that wraps up this week's show. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast. You get those episodes as soon as they drop. Feel free to leave us a rating, a review on Apple Podcasts. Shout out at us on Spotify. Voice your mind. If you want to submit a question to us, reach out to us. Like Dave said, at the Dive Down on Twitter. Email us thedivedown@gmail.com. The Patreon is at patreon.com/thedivedown. The store is at thedivedown.com/store. Heavy Play, one of our sponsors, our main sponsor. Awesome deck boxes, dice boxes, playmats. I'm going to be picking some more up in Chicago. I think I want that purple. I didn't get them in Denver. Use code TheDiveDown2024, 10% off your first order. Or if you buy them in real life, say, hey, I heard about you in the Dive Down. Mana Traders, longtime affiliate. Use the promo code in the show notes, which is the divedown_3YO for 10% off your first 2 months of renting those Magic Online cards. Save money on paper cards. Our friends at Nerd Rage Gaming just give our listeners 8% off their order with the code DIVE8. Thank you, Nowhere. Thank you, Spaceblood, for letting us use your music for a long time. And until next week, get out there
and eat deep dish pizza.